Run with the headline that you guys have just a rampant amount of illegal marijuana
Yeah.
farms
There you go.
on the
There you
state.
go.
And
We
they
gotta
can't
get this
enforce
fixed.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we can't enforce it, so we have a lot of stolen cattle getting high.
Here we are again for another episode of the Real Deal Landman Show. Drew Hopkins, Jerris Johnson joining you yet again. Jerris, I am here back in Oklahoma City. I enjoyed a really nice weekend, and then it did the Oklahoma spring thing of where we went from 75 degrees to 20 degrees in a matter of hours. Right now it is freezing cold here, and by the end of the week it's going to be 95. So do you miss your time in Oklahoma is the first thing I would ask you.
It would be hard to miss my time in Oklahoma because I had the exact same thing happen this weekend.
Did you really?
Yeah, for us, it was about 12 hours ahead of you guys or so. But yeah, we went from 70 degrees to 70 mile per hour winds and probably 3 or 4 inches of snow hit the ground this weekend.
No kidding.
Most of it's melting off, but yeah, no, same thing.
For Colorado and for skiing and everything, like, are you guys potentially getting more snow before the end of the season, or do you think this is like a late, like last push?
It's not looking like there will be much more. And frankly, the meteorologist people are pretty freaked out about it because there's so little snowpack. And so there's concerns in terms of what is that going to mean for the summer? Not just like, does that mean it's going to be hot this summer, but like the dryness,
fire danger.
and fire danger and all that stuff.
We had one of the years at Chesapeake, I was sitting in my boss's office, and it was a big fire year, and it was super windy as it gets, and he had a little TV next to his computer. And so he and I were talking about some conference or something that was coming up, and we were just shooting the breeze, and I looked over and I was like, I recognize all of those houses. And I was like, can you turn the volume up on that? And it was our neighborhood that was getting ready to like go up in flames. And raced home. I was side by side with a fire truck, got in the neighborhood, had to give like all ID and clearance and everything just to get in because they wanted to keep everybody out, obviously, but it was scary, and they got it all taken care of. But man, between the tornado danger, between the fire danger, I mean, Oklahoma is prime vacation destination, obviously, but we definitely have weird stuff.
My wife likes to say that Oklahoma tries to kill you every day of the year.
We do our best.
Yes.
We definitely do our best.
I don't think we came on to talk about the weather, Drew.
We did not. You know, this is not a day to really get too much into the weather, but on a nice cold day like this, why not have a conversation with somebody? I mean, somebody appointed maybe by a governor. I don't know. Like that could be kind of new for our show, right? Have we had anybody that's ever been appointed by a governor before?
Not that I know of. And I will have some questions about this. Like, how does this happen? Just in case I'm interested in it someday.
We are absolutely thrilled to welcome today Mr. Dan Whitmarsh, who is the Secretary at the Commission of the Land Office here in Oklahoma. Dan, welcome to the show. Off, I don't know if are Jerris and I, are we supposed to salute you, or what's the proper?
Yeah, what do we call
Is there some sort of, are we supposed to recite something from the state, or what do you prefer?
Typically, you click your heels,
okay,
and then stand at attention, and then other than that,
and
I won't be. Be careful.
Are you still a no direct eye contact guy? I mean, do I have to look down and to the left or from my camera here?
I'll make an exception today. I'll make
it's
just Dan. Just call me Dan, and we don't need to be formal.
Well,
what is the title of courtesy? You know, because like I guess a congressional member, it's honorable. Are you? Do we like? Do people call you secretary? Do they call you honorable?
Secretary or Mr. Secretary?
Okay,
if they're formal. Mr.
Secretary. Okay, we can do that.
I get a lot of LinkedIn job offers to be a secretary. That's all I get. So I get that all the time.
You really made it. That's great.
I've made it. So yeah.
Well, when you're going to all of the big state parties and everything, and you're explaining to somebody, how do you explain the office, like the land office, in like plain English to people?
Just kind of a quick 30,000-foot description. We were established at statehood right after the Louisiana Purchase of 1803, set up land offices starting with Ohio and everything out west from, really the Mississippi. They started establishing land offices to have these trusts that were set up to for the benefit of public school, public education, because they always felt it was important to make sure they had some revenues coming in for public schools. So by the time we got to Oklahoma, it had been pretty well established, the land offices. So the Congress, when they allotted through the Enabling Act, kind of saying that we would set up a trust. When we became a state, they incorporated that Enabling Act into the Constitution of Oklahoma. And so every section 16 and 36 is set up for K through 12. Section 13s are set up for higher education, OU, the land grant schools. So, and whatever funds come out of those go into a trust. And so we started out with about 5 million at statehood, and we're now at $3.2 billion.
Wow.
And the dividends and interest off of those go directly to schools. And then anything we do, like oil and gas leasing, those bonus monies we get up front, those go straight to schools. Then any royalty revenues that we generate go into the big trust and keep growing that pie. And last year we're on pace to break another record 3 years in a row since I've been secretary for 3 years. We distributed 156 million to schools and higher ed last year. So we're on pace to
That's
beat that this year.
that is fantastic. And you were acting secretary, I believe, in 2022, right? And then appointed
Cor-
in March of 23
Correct.
ish.
So yeah, I came into the agency out of the oil and gas industry right before COVID, November 2019, as the mineral director. And so I did that for 2 years, and then I got promoted to assistant secretary. And then, like a couple months after I was promoted, the secretary, Elliot Chambers, who's an oil and gas guy, worked at Chesapeake, but he stepped down. So, and this was during the governor's election run against Joy Hoffmeister. So they made me acting secretary when he stepped down. And then after the election, the governor just came to me and said, do you want to be the secretary? So,
That's
and then
amazing.
he appointed me at that point.
It's amazing how some of the, like, and we've heard so many good stories from different people of how they have come to be in their position. And sometimes it's because somebody immediately leaves. Sometimes it's because, I mean, you just never know. And
You
it's
never know.
it's so incredible of how people get to, where they are and such prestigious, I mean, titles like yourself. But let's even take a step back of what started you wanting to get into even the energy industry, maybe from back in your school days.
Yeah, born and raised in Oklahoma City, went to Bishop McGinnis High School. I went to University of Central Oklahoma, got a history degree, very lucrative. How much you could do with that? So I was doing sales and stuff for a while, and then I ended up getting a master's at Oklahoma City University in liberal arts, which was doubling down on not being able to do something. And so yeah, so I rolled right into when I was finishing that, I rolled right into law school. So I went to OCU Law School, graduated from there, knew halfway through I did not want to practice.
Mm,
So, and I had been applying for like pharmaceutical sales jobs. This was in 2001. And so I took a pharmaceutical sale job for a couple of years. And then to move up in that, you have to move away. And I was divorced and had a son who was like 4. I'm like, I got to do something else.
just stay
So I
here.
started, someone mentioned to me who was a lawyer, an oil and gas lawyer, said, you ought to be a landman. And I was like, what the hell's a landman? And started bugging brokers and went to go work for a broker and loved it. Chaining title, negotiating oil and gas leases. And my sales background helped that. The law
Yeah.
helped. I was this oddity that kind of everything fit. And I was like, this is the best job. I loved it. And so I was doing that for a while and then got on at Chesapeake in '05 and then worked there 8 years and doing a little bit of everything. E&P. The last 3 years, I was buying minerals for Aubrey and doing that and just had a blast. So that's how I got into the energy side of it. And there were times I could have pivoted to try and do the legal side, and I'm just that just doesn't look fun to me. So the Landman was just so much more enjoyable and exciting and diverse in my mind.
That is, I mean, that's pretty interesting to get to kind of go through the whole Chesapeake experience and then
Hmm.
being able to go through that mineral buying experience. What kind of caused you to want to did you know more about the state, or did you know anything about it before you really kind of gained into that or got into that group?
No, I was doing some, you know, you eat what you kill when you're a
Sales.
1099 landman.
That's
And
right.
after 4 years, my wife was like, "Could you go get a regular paycheck and some benefits?" And so I was doing some work, and I was like, "Oh," so I got on LinkedIn, and the job popped up, and I just applied for it, and they called me in late 2019, and I had an interview with the head of the agency at the time. And I think what kind of sealed it for me was I did a little bit of midstream marketing and development for a couple years for a company that was based out of Tulsa, and we got crude oil to Cushing, and that's a completely different thing. And but I learned that and was getting crude oil to Cushing and learning about all the different gravities and things
Right.
like that of oil that you don't really need to worry about as a landman. And they had a natural gas marketing program at the land office, and they're like, "You're the only person that understands this." And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I haven't done natural gas hedging and stuff like that, but I understand the concept of it." So that seemed like that kind of sealed the deal for me there. And then I got the job. They called and offered me the job. So, and there I was with the state. So, just a complete pivot that direction.
What surprised you whenever you first started working with the state and you first started looking at, and am I off base or am I close with, is it 730,000
Mhm.
plus surface area of acreage and
Mhm.
then over a million mineral acres? Is that right?
That's it. That's correct.
For somebody, for the layman, how does a state, and you kind of talked about it before of setting up like before statehood, but how does a state end up owning that much land? And does that surprise people when you talk to, or having the leases behind that land? Does it surprise people whenever you talk to them the state has that much?
It does. It really they're extremely surprised. We actually started out with 3 million acres of
Wow.
minerals, but the since the eastern half of the state was Indian territory, we have no surface over there. So
Okay.
that's why. And they gave us in lieu of lands all the way up in the corner of Cimarron County towards Colorado. We have over 200 and something 70,000 acres up in Cimarron County. That's why we have those big ranches up there.
Okay.
And so we own 20% of Cimarron. Yeah. But we sold off stuff for a while until they just finally stopped. And now we're not even constitutionally allowed to sell minerals. We can sell surface, but we can't sell our minerals. So,
Interesting.
because if we were to sell surface, we would have to put that back into the permanent trust because
Okay.
we're not allowed to diminish the trust in any way. But yeah, people are surprised by it.
Did you say at the beginning of this that the creation of state land offices, am I to understand that was a federal mandate? So with each
Mhm.
state that was being created, the feds said you must have a state land office and you must allocate lands that are going to be used for your state's education systems.
Yeah, that's how they structured it. And then now some have you would have to do depending on how you integrate into your constitution. Like Kansas doesn't have surface anymore; they sold it all
Okay.
off. But I think they still may have their trust set up, but you don't have not that many people need to manage that. But yeah, so that's that sort of template started with Ohio and just kept moving out. So when we go to our national trust conference, state trust conference, California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Wyoming, Alaska, all those, Arizona. And I will tell you this, and this kind of warms my heart as an oil and gas guy. When we get up and go to our national conferences, we get up and do kind of a roll call and we talk about how much money we've generated, what's going on, what bills and legislative stuff we're dealing with. So many of those Western states, we're just Texas, Oklahoma, North Dakota, New Mexico are just crushing those other trust offices because they don't have oil and gas like we do. And
Mm-hmm.
California never shows up. I don't know if they're just too good to show up for it, but I mean, New Mexico, Eddy and Lee counties, right across the border there, of Texas, just, I mean, they do like $800 million, and North Dakota does like $800 million that they distribute. Texas is 2.1 billion. They're huge that they distribute to public schools. So I think we fall in line about 7 out of 32 land offices. We're somewhere ranked about 7th or 8th on our distributions. So they kind of meagerly walk up to the podium and say, "Well, we did 27 million last year. We're not like the oil states." They always preface it, "We're not like the oil states." And it makes me proud. And I like to kind of rub that in on the West Coast over there, going, "Hey guys, you show some love, and good things can happen."
On the surface acres, like those sections, are those sections where schools are often physically located, or is that totally irrelevant to this?
No, that's where they're typically located on there. So that's why when we ever get an oil and gas lease offers or anything like that, you're usually seeing them in the 16 or the 36. We will have picked up some in some other areas over time, but that's the schools are typically situated on that.
So in my, is that all schools or is that like just secondary education?
I think it's the K through 12. I think is all on. They should all be on 16 or 36. That doesn't mean they couldn't have gotten a grant or something somewhere else and put their school somewhere else. But typically, they're going to put it on the CLO lands.
So obviously, my elementary school in Enid, Oklahoma, did not encompass an entire section of land. So was that like,
Right.
did it get sold off over time by the state to like the neighborhoods
No,
and things around it?
um, it could have. We may have carved out some of those, or they probably at some point did sell those off
Hmm.
early on when those schools were developed. And that's probably where we lost some of our acreage, but we still have so much elsewhere, and we still do have some schools that sit on our lands that we just have the minerals underneath them.
Yeah. When it comes time to set up like what the new lease form is going to be on behalf of the state of Oklahoma, is that something that you're directly involved in on creating that
Uh,
form?
we were when I first got in 2019. We were sort of hot and bothered about getting that lease form updated, and then COVID hit, and 2 years of just dealing with that cluster. And then, although we came to the offices pretty, we did the hybrid for quite a while, and then it just sort of died because then when I got to the assistant secretary level, I promoted up my assistant director, who was a geologist he'd been at Devon for like 16, 17 years or something. And he's running it right now, Chris Wiggers, and he does a fantastic job. We just have not gone back. We keep seeing there's always fires we're putting out somewhere else, and we just haven't gotten back to that. I know in my desk, I've got a folder about this thick where we talked to attorneys, we were redlining things are going back, and then it just sort of fizzled. So that's funny you mentioned that because about 4 months ago, I ran into that folder. I'm like, we need to get back to this and take a look at this lease form again. I'm just sitting here taking a note of that because I do need to get back to that and take a look at it because
Attaboy, Jarrett.
that's
You're
what we were
causing
working on.
change. Good job.
Way to go, Jerris. See, we're open. State is open to change.
That's fantastic.
And I don't even live there anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Good job. Good job.
So when we've like in the state of Oklahoma, and we've all seen the news over the last few weeks and months of Devon and Expand, and so much change goes through everything. As the state works with these different companies, how those companies are approaching like state minerals, do you see any difference between the major operators or the small operators? Or is there anything do you guys like working with majors, or does it really matter?
I mean, it doesn't really matter. We just
Sure.
like working with good operators. One of the things that I made it a priority in my administration while I'm here is there was sort of this undertone of when I got to the state agents, when I got to the land office, that the operators were bad, oil company bad, and it was that sort of bureaucratic mindset. And I was like, guys, they, the oil and gas companies are providing about 85% of our revenues. You don't slap the hand that feeds you, bite the hand that feeds
Right.
you. You get in the sandbox with them and say, how can we all play nice and work well together? Because we want you to have a producing well on our land. You want it and we want it. So let's look at it from that approach. And I've gotten along really well with Brooke over at the Petroleum Alliance. And
Good organization.
yes, and I've told them, hey guys, we want to work with you guys. We don't want to be viewed as this bureaucratic, overlord that's gonna nick you because there's a check on the I'm checking boxes here, and you guys, I'm sorry, but there were 5 boxes checked. I'm supposed to do this. No, that's not how we operate. We look at every situation on a case by case basis, and 99% of the operators that we deal with are fantastic, and they do it the right way. You're going to get the worst ones are going to be that very last small operator, and even those, I'm just saying, relative,
Right.
they're the ones that are going, I don't have any money left. And here's the keys. And there's 12 wells on here that need plugging, and I don't have any money, and they're gone. And, those are some of the things that we deal with. But that's probably the one negative. Other than that, all the big majors are great to work with. If we call them up and say, hey, could you plug this well, or could you remediate some of this? They are on top of it. They're fantastic to work with. They'll call us and say, hey, we had a rig, a rig's coming,
Yeah.
and we may need a month or whatever. It's like, got it.
Nice.
You can't play hardball just because there's a lease there. You've got to be nimble at times. And if it's somebody that's going to chronically tell me they're going to do something and they don't, that's different. But if it's someone we've had just recently, we had an operator that had several wells. They're fantastic. I don't want to say their name, but they have several wells. They're fantastic, and they needed a little bit of time on it. And I'm like, absolutely, give them that time, because they need that time. I've been there. I understand some of those things that can cause you're button up to the end of the lease, and hey, we've got something coming, and can you give us a little more time? It's like, absolutely, we'll do that. So
Fantastic.
I've tried to change that mindset there. And we brought in more private people that we've hired. And one of the surprises that I found about the agency is there's good people in there, and they're smart people, and they work hard, and they believe in the mission of the agency. It's just they needed, sometimes you just need a little bit of a paradigm shift and say, we're gonna start going in this direction. And I think that's going to pay off for us in the long run.
I do
What
too.
what are one or two things about either your job or your office or the bureaucracy or administrative procedures that are pretty interesting that most people probably don't know?
Well, one thing that we administer, I guess I could say, just because I'm the secretary of the agency, there's a lot of things that aren't my final decision. The commissioners are the governor, lieutenant governor, and they're my 5 commissioners. I'm appointed by the governor, but it's the governor, lieutenant governor, state auditor, state superintendent, and then the head of agriculture, Blaine Arthur. And so we deal. They were set up under law and the Oklahoma Constitution to be the board over us, and I answer to them. So there's some things that they ultimately have the final say on. I do the operations side of it. So probably that interaction. I think a lot of people think I can wave my wand and we do. There's some things I can't do
Sure.
that we have to take to the commissioners. And so dealing with us, we have investment real estate property. We bought the old Sandridge Tower. We owned Robinson Renaissance. We have about 145 million dollars in real estate properties
I
that
think that
we
I think that Devon building might be coming up pretty soon. You gotta want to get a
don't
new
think that
office there.
I'm sure there's some legislators going, hey guys, you want to buy a building? And so, I mean, those are some of the type of things we do look at. And, the governor being a real estate guy, he's very in tune to what's going on around. Then you also have those factions that they don't like government owning buildings, so you're dealing with all kinds of groups there. So I would say also something that I navigate and I deal a lot with the legislators up at the Capitol, quite a bit.
Hmm.
And there's a very good relationships with the vast majority of them up there, and dealing with those sort of dynamics. I don't envy them because when they make a decision, they're going to piss somebody off.
Yeah,
One
inevitably.
constituent's happy and one's not. And seeing that in real time, it's a difficult challenge for them. And then we show up and we say, hey, as an agency, we'd like to do this or we'd like to do that, and they've got to try and juggle that with, do their constituents like it. So I'd say the legislative side of my job was way more than I realized.
Hmm. So
Way,
speaking of
way more.
speaking of pissing people off, you've got to go for the last few years, and these have probably been some of the biggest years that we've talked about. Things like wind, solar, carbon capture, everything like that. Like, and talk about decisive. There is rarely any middle ground whenever you're talking about that. How has the land office navigated through those opportunities?
It's been difficult because when I started, everything you just mentioned, and then throw in data centers on top of that.
For sure.
Yeah, and so when I first got there, wind and solar, people were like, they weren't too hot, they weren't too cold on it. You heard some rumblings out into maybe the rural communities. Now, the ones who get the wind and solar money really like it.
Yeah.
But if you're not getting it, it's an eyesore. It's that green new scam stuff. And then, so we are rich targets for California, New York, because they're
Yeah.
looking around going, where is land inexpensive and lots of it? And we're one of the first states they contact. I had a group, data center group, several months ago, reach out to us, and they were all like, I don't think anybody was over 28 years old, and they were like, "Hey, to get the land like you guys have here, one, you can't get it, but if you have the money, it'd cost you $250 million to
Yeah.
buy, and 2,000 or whatever acres of land, and you guys have it in abundance, and you have cheap energy. Your energy prices here are relatively inexpensive. Their biggest issue is just grid capacity and
Yeah.
water, and when you're dealing with data centers, because they consume a lot of water. So it's been a challenge because at the end of last year's session, it was all anti-wind, anti-solar. And towards the end, we could see the data center thing. We're like, that's coming. That's what's next. And sure enough, the data center pushback has been pretty hard. And so from our vantage point, we like to say it's a math issue for us. We are obligated to go for the highest revenue if it's a allowable use on the land.
That makes sense.
So, we just do the numbers and say, hey, this is 10 times, 20 times what I could get on an ag parcel. It's up to the commissioners. Unfortunately for them, they're the ones that have to deal with you guys make the decision. We're just going to bring it to you.
Yeah.
And then you guys decide if it's in the best interest of the state. That's where they're different than us. It's math problem for them. Is this the best interest of the
Yeah.
state? Do we need to be taking all this ag land off? Do we
Good.
need to, do we really want to be, some people are calling us, they don't want to be a data center dumping ground. They don't want to have data centers everywhere. And everyone's worried that their costs are going to go up in unison with those data centers, their utility costs, their water usage. So there's those real concerns out there that people bring to the table, and we're on the front end of it. So I don't know which direction it's going to go. I really don't.
It's interesting to try to, and I know we can't predict, but like how how incredibly things have changed over the last 5 years, and how
Hmm.
over the next 10 years, like where we've had such good conversations with other people on this very show of talking about data centers and seeing just kind of that new AI. Like AI has been the buzzword for the past like year and a half for sure. And so that's going to be very interesting. And I can totally understand what you're saying by Oklahoma would be a target for the myriad of reasons that you mentioned. Much
Uh-huh.
cheaper here and get so much more done. So that's very interesting. Have you seen anything else? What's the most unusual thing you've seen somebody use like CLO land for? Like the most unusual use?
The most unusual use, oh, that's a good one. We've had Well, we did have, this isn't an unusual use, but we did have stolen cattle on our land,
Hell
one
yeah.
time. We got a call and someone said, "Hey, there's a bunch of cattle on your land and some guy stole it and he just parked it on your land." So we had to deal with that. Um, we deal with, God, some interesting, we can't have marijuana. We're not supposed to have marijuana, but, yeah, again, we have 8 field reps that have to oversee that 720. So if
Wow.
there's a marijuana growing outfit out there, it's going to be hard to detect. We are trying to incorporate more drone usage, and
Smart.
we're trying to get that, integrated into and satellite. We're always looking into satellites usage to see
Interesting.
if we can zone in on any of those things.
We'll run with the headline that you guys have just a rampant amount of illegal marijuana
Yeah.
There you
farms
go.
on the
There you
state
go.
And
lands. We
they
we got to
can't
get this
enforce
clicks.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we can't enforce it, so we have a lot of stolen cattle getting high on our
Yeah.
lands. Yeah.
That's the sound bite that's going to take this episode to the front of the pack.
With the inventory of land that is owned, is all of it being used, or are there portions of it that are available? Is there like a sweet spot percentage that you try to have at all times that's being used, or like what's the objective with that?
It of that acreages that we have, they're on 5-year ag leases, so they roll 1/5 roll off every year. So and we rarely have a one that's not bid on. So all of that is being there might be there are some outliers over there. Maybe they're landlocked, they're hard to get to. Those are ones that we might look at. Do we want to sell those? Do we want to get those sold off if they're really if no one's really bidding on it? But when we have our auctions, it's very rare that we have some. We might have one or two that might not go to auction, but that a lot of times that's because they didn't like the price.
Hmm.
It wasn't because they weren't interested in it. Maybe there was a bidding war and they just didn't want to, or they were worried about a bidding war. So no, it all gets used, but it's largely ag. Our heritage lands are largely ag, and on those we do have. I mean, yeah, you're going to have like energy, oil and gas. There's airports. The airports are under. Well, a lot of times we'll sit on some of our lands. We have where Crumble Cookies and Torchies by the Chisholm Creek there that we
Right.
own that little spot. We own the land that little spot's on,
No kidding.
and yeah, so we have food trucks that'll park on some of our vacant parking lots, and we've run into that a few times where little food trucks have popped up. A lot of billboards. We have billboards on there, and people want to lease those billboards from us. Things like that, cell towers, all kinds of stuff.
Interesting.
So it's a little bit of everything out there that you can probably imagine.
Understanding that, given the size of the state and probably somewhat of the limited size of the agency, do you find yourselves constrained on resources or limited on things? And I guess the premise of the question is, are there opportunities for the private sector to somehow work in conjunction with your agency?
Oh yeah. We'll do a lot of private public partnerships on things when we can. We on most of our land, they're sort of that if you want, let's say you want to purchase some of the agricultural land, you have to do a written request for it, but it also has to fall under certain parameters. Is it a landlocked parcel of land? Does it, if it's a high ag usage area, we're probably not going to pull it off the ag use because again, they're ultimately we can't just keep replacing all our ag land. We got to have ag land out there for
Mm.
cattle and all the stuff that they grow. But there are some instances where there might be it's a high hunting area, lots of trees. We get a lot of hunters, recreational people that want to lease our lands and go bid on those. But those if it's kind of that treesy area, and it's because a lot of our lands are on the Lincoln County is really hot. On the outskirts of Oklahoma City are really hot, and it just go around Oklahoma City, and anything we own around on the edges can be pretty hot areas that people want to look at and go, hey, we might want to buy this from you or lease this land from you. We'll do long-term commercial leases, 55 years. We'll
Wow.
do a 3-year short-term commercial lease, which does not require an auction. To put it out to auction, the 55-year or anything above a 3-year does require we go to auction. And on the sales side, if that ever happens, it's this is how slow the state can be, but it's probably a good thing. It's 3 bites of the apple. We have to go to the commissioners. Let's say you want to buy 160 acres. We have to go to the commissioners. They have to approve it unanimously of the quorum. So a quorum is 3 or more. So if there's 3 there or 4 there or 5, they all have to be unanimous in their vote to first appraise it, second to come back and we like the appraisal value, and then the third, we had our auction and they like the price. They like the end result. If all 3 of those are unanimous, then they could sell the land. If one person says no, the deal's dead. So it's that tenuous. And we can also do exchanges where, which does not require an auction. So let's say 9.9 out of 10 times if the commission agrees to an exchange, which they don't do a lot because they like the auctions because they fetch more dollars.
Yeah.
But under certain circumstances, they may say, "Hey, we'll exchange this land over here for this land over here, as long as it's of greater value to us, and we will go out and find that land and say this is the." So you don't have to own it. We can say, "Hey, we like this jewelry store over here, or we like this over," and it's a 7 cap rate as opposed to a 1 or 2 cap rate. At closing, you own it for about 2 seconds, and we do it all at closing, and we end up taking that, and you end up taking the other parcel of land. So it gets real complicated. Our commercial real estate group has a lot of moving parts that they deal with, and a lot of facets to it. So it's very
That's
interesting
amazing.
stuff.
That is super
Yeah.
interesting. Good night. So when you guys are getting the revenue back in and making these sales and everything else, just very, I know you've done it in a lot of ways here, but just high level, how does this get back to the classrooms and back to the school kids for Oklahoma?
Okay, so it's a formula. It's just average daily attendance.
Okay.
So if we sell some land, that's the corpus. We can't diminish it. We have to put those revenues back into the $3 billion trust, or we have it in another piece of property. But if we make any money off of that sale, we have to put it back into the corpus. And on the corpus is where interest and dividends, which are the bulk of what we make. I think last year we did about 112 million of the 156 million came from that $3.2 billion trust on the dividends and interest. And it's a formula that the state treasurer has, and it's just average daily attendance, butts in the seat. So if you're in Godibo or you're in Tulsa, how many people do you have? And we allocate those dollars on a proportionate share for those butts in the seat. So we determine how much we got this month for butts in the seats and then we just dole it out. So it's mailbox money for the K through 12, and they have no restrictions on it. The superintendent or the district can go buy a Ferrari with it. We can't. We have no control over that. The universities have to. It's capex stuff, capital stuff for the universities, but the schools. People have asked us, "Hey, can you put any restrictions on those?" We are constitutionally not allowed to. It's
Wow.
just we write the check.
The number of loopholes we are learning about today is fascinating.
I know, like
you
this is
can grow
really
marijuana without being caught. Superintendents can buy Ferraris with their school trust money. I mean, there's just so many things here.
There's no limit.
The next time I go to my hometown of Ponca City, I'm going to be looking for any Ferrari on the street, and that's going to be the telltale sign for sure.
Or become a superintendent. And life's good.
That's right. Well, okay.
For the oil and gas royalties that are collected, is that your office that collects those and has a staff that manages? Are there like audit procedures that you periodically have to do with the operators, or is it a pretty clean process?
No, those are all good questions. And yes to all. We have our financial services division. I run by their offices because they're constantly moving. There's so many. They have 9 trusts that they have to keep up with. And all this money comes in. They have to they got to make sure it goes to this well. These wells were allocated from this. They put it in a pot. They got to pay, and they are almost never late. I don't know that they're ever late on their payments to the schools. I mean, that's their number one. So they do that stuff. For the royalties that we bring in, they make sure that goes back into the corpus. And we probably bring in anywhere from $1.5 million to $6 million a month off our royalties. We
Hmm.
have about 5,500 wells. It just depends on how the commodity pricing and when certain wells pay and things like that. And then we do have a royalty compliance division, and its job is to audit sort of piecemeal. They audit uh, and to make sure we're being paid properly because we have no deductions in our leases. So they make sure that we're being paid properly on that. They provide the form letters. They communicate with the operators and say, "Hey, we're not sure that we got paid properly on this one well." And then I always tell them communicate first, and they do a wonderful job of that. And I rarely hear, if you ever hear them come out and say, "Hey, this operator's not paying us properly," it's like a handful.
Hmm.
And a lot of times, and you guys understand this, these properties change hands. They hand you the well file, go, "Here you go." They get the new decks. They're trying to set them up. They might just be using the old ones, or they may just go, I don't agree with these decks," and not know what our lease restrictions are. And then they might say, "Well, why are we paying this? Why are they paying this over here?" And then we alert them and say, "Hey, you owe us on those payments because you didn't pay us properly. You took out deductions that you weren't supposed to take out." And 99% of them go, "Oh, I didn't realize that."
Yeah.
And they work really well with us. So again, when you've got a 99% success rate, there's no reason to ever treat that industry as a bad industry in my
Sure.
book.
Sure.
That's a pretty hell of a good rate right there.
Yeah. I think my last question for you, Mr. Secretary, is what is your career trajectory from this spot? Like, are you a politician now that
Oh
are there
no.
additional offices that you seek, or are you in this for life or until a different governor, or like, how does that work?
So I serve with the governor.
Okay.
So officially my last day is January like 9th when he leaves office at noon in 2027. So next year. That It's rare that unless you're a cabinet secretary, like the Secretary of Energy or something like that, it's rare that I'll stay in my position until the next governor comes in and either decides to keep me or says, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to bring in this guy over here and take your spot." And I'm prepared for that. So I'll either, I'm looking at some options on that end, whether it's staying going to another state agency and doing some stuff with another state agency, or I don't
Marijuana
know,
farming?
marijuana farming or cattle theft. I'm looking into that. It's very lucrative,
It
and
is.
so that's just one of those things. I'm kind of keeping my ear to the ground on some of those things just in case. I would love to stay,
Yeah.
and I've had a lot of the legislators and the commissioners and a lot of people tell me they've liked my approach, and my sales background has made me conducive to working with people and communicating with people, because that's the main thing. Pick up the
Mm-hmm.
phone, just pick up the
Right.
phone and talk to them, and that solves so many problems if you do. Because if you don't talk to them, then they just assume the worst, and then bad things happen. So, for me, it'd be nice to stay on if that happens, and if not, I'll find something else to do.
Well,
Is it a position that tends to be partisan?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm a Republican, and
Yeah.
since I'm appointed by the governor, that's one of their first questions. Do you support the governor and do you support his policies? And oh, absolutely. And so it is but I don't really delve too much into the political, you know, throwing my hat into one thing or the other unless it's just sort of off the record.
Yeah.
But it's pretty easy to be a Republican in Oklahoma. So I get along with a lot of the Democrat legislators. I get along really well with many of them. So again, it's just they like our mission and they understand our mission. One thing I didn't mention to you guys is uh, we're appropriated because they said we make our own money. We don't pull from the general fund. We're
Mm.
one of the few agencies that don't. We make our own money, but where our budget is appropriated. So the legislators decide how much of our own money. I liken it to my grandparents gave me $100 and your parents say, well, you can spend 20 and put the rest in the savings. That's kind of that's how they work with us. So we make our own money and we have a pile of cash and go, are you guys good with this budget? They can cut it. They can give it. I said, if you give us more money or take more money, it doesn't move the needle because we're making it ourselves. It
Yeah.
doesn't pull from the general fund. So a lot of people don't. That's one thing that most people don't understand about us as well. We pay for ourselves.
That's really interesting. Well, my last question is come January, or if you're extended on beyond that, let's say 15, 20 years down the road, what do you hope your legacy is, or what do you hope the land office's legacy is after your time has expired with it?
I think not feeling like you're actually talking to a state agency when you pick up the phone and call us, that you actually feel like you're working with a partner and a good neighbor. I like to say a good neighbor out. We want to work and do things well with individuals. You're the community, and we want to work with you and be a good neighbor to you. I want us to be more modern. I'm all in on AI and the use of AI. I'm all in on it. My wife and I are dorks. We play with each other with our, hey, what did you try this? Put this in there. And I have Claude and she has Chat GPT, and we're just doing all kinds of stuff with it. And I'm like, we have to get on board, or we're already
Getting left
behind.
behind. Yeah.
We're getting left behind as it is, and we've been doing this for a couple of months, and we're way behind. But at least we're not. I'm ahead of the person tomorrow who's getting on. And so I want the agency to utilize uh, more modern things to free up their time. I want it to be more efficient, and I want to walk away from the agency with people going, they've just worked well with the legislators, they worked well with the community, and I hate hearing, well, it's always been done this way. That drives me nuts when I
Yeah.
hear that. And I want us to be viewed as something that that pivoted a different direction and started doing things a little more modern and a different way of thinking. That's what I would like to sort of leave as a legacy with this agency.
I think that's a hell of a legacy, don't you, Jerris?
Yep. And a great way to end too. That's a excellent note to wrap up on.
That definitely is. So for Drew Hopkins, for Jerris Johnson, for the Honorable Secretary Dan Whitmarsh, we are so thankful that you were on today. Thank you for listening to watching the Real Deal Landman Show. We will see you next time.
See ya.